The smell of motor oil and regret hung thick in the pre-dawn air of Rodriguez Auto and Cycle. Marcus Rodriguez's hands trembled as he torqued the final bolt on Hawk's unfinished panhead, the wrench slipping twice before catching. 62 years old, and his body was betraying him in 100 small ways. Arthritis gnawing at knuckles that had once field stripped an M16 in 20 seconds, shrapnel embedded near his spine from the Da Nang, sending lightning through his hip every time the weather turned 3 stents, keeping his heart pumping when it wanted to quit. The garage walls told the story he could no longer speak aloud without his voice cracking. Vietnam platoon photo from 1970, 23 faces staring back at him, only 7 still breathing. His first Harley purchase in 1975 freed him on 2 wheels after the VA finally stabilized him enough to hold a job. The Brotherhood founding charter from 1982, 12 signatures, promising to be more than the monsters the war had tried to create. Wedding photo with Elena in 1985, her smile so bright it hurt to look at even now. Maya's birth in 2011, a miracle after Elena's first cancer remission, a daughter arriving when he'd made peace with dying alone. Elena's last ride in 2018, skeletal and determined, refusing to go quietly into any hospital room. The photo he couldn't stop staring at tonight hung in the far corner, Victor Hawk Morrison's funeral 3 months ago, casket draped in chapter colors, brothers, saluting as they lowered a warrior into Pennsylvania soil. Hawk had made Marcus promise something at the end, morphine fogged, but crystal clear in his intention. Die with your boots on, brother. Make your last ride count. Marcus had held that gnarled hand, feeling the death rattle building in Hawk's chest, and nodded. A promise between men who'd watched friends die in rice paddies, who'd built something pure from the wreckage of their youth, who understood that eventually every warrior faces a final mission. He just hadn't expected his to arrive on a Tuesday morning phone call from a middle school principal. The wrench clattered to the concrete floor. Marcus bent to retrieve it, his spine screaming, and saw his reflection in the chrome of Hawk's bike. Gray beard, weathered skin, mapped with scars, eyes that had seen too much and still couldn't look away. The 173rd Airborne Brigade patch on his vest earned in blood and terror. Purple Heart beneath it, shrapnel prize from an ambush that killed 6 brothers while he dragged 3 to safety. The chapter VP patch, 35 years of brotherhood distilled into leather and thread. His phone buzzed. 5:47 a.m. The night shift manager at County Hospital, a buddy who owed him favors. Liam Chen still in ICU. Surgery scheduled for 8 a.m. Broken nose, fractured cheekbone, grade 2 concussion. Parents camped in waiting room. David looks ready to collapse. Sarah hasn't stopped crying. Marcus's jaw clenched hard enough to make his teeth ache. 11 years old, 70 pounds soaking wet. Artist who drew pictures of Marines raising flags because his father had told him stories about heroes. And yesterday morning, that child had stepped between 3 bigger boys, and Maya taking a beating that would leave permanent scars because courage mattered more than survival. The phone buzzed again. Danny Torres, his young mechanic, probably hungover and definitely not understanding why Marcus had called him at this hour. Boss, you serious about closing shop today? We got 3 bikes promised by noon. Marcus typed back with fingers that barely cooperated. Close it. Tell customers emergency came up. Family matter. Family, that's what this was about. Not blood family. Marcus had learned in Vietnam that blood meant nothing compared to the bonds forged in fire. Liam Chen was family, now inducted the moment he chose to protect instead of flee, initiated into a brotherhood that transcended patches and motorcycles and decades of shared road. The question was, what came next? What could one old man with a failing body and fading time do against a system designed to protect money over honor or privilege over courage? Marcus walked to his office, unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, and pulled out a leather-bound journal that hadn't been opened in 5 years. Elena had given it to him the week before she died, her handwriting shaky but determined on the first page. When I'm gone, don't let Maya forget what it means to stand up. Don't let this world make her small. And Marcus, when your time comes, make it count. No hospital beds, no morphine haze. Go out fighting for something that matters. He turned pages filled with Elena's observations about their daughter, about the world, about him. Near the end, one entry stopped him cold. You think you're broken because of the war. You think the rage and the nightmares and the way you can't sit with your back to doors means you failed to come home whole. But baby, you came home more whole than most. You came home knowing what matters. Protection, honor. standing between the vulnerable and the violence. That's not broken. That's the only thing keeping this world from drowning in cowards. Marcus closed the journal, his vision blurring. Elena would have already been on her bike riding to the Chen family's apartment with food and fury and plans. She would have understood what he was about to do, even if the rational part of his brain screamed that it was insane. He pulled his phone out again, scrolled through contacts accumulated over 40 years. Names and numbers representing lifetimes of shared miles, close calls, promises kept when the world said, let it go. His thumb hovered over James Ironside Sullivan's name. Pittsburgh chapter president, 67 years old, Purple Heart from the same firefight that got Marcus his, though Ironside had taken the rounds in his legs and walked with a permanent limp that got worse every winter. They'd served together, bled together, built the brotherhood together when coming home from Vietnam meant being spit on and called baby killers by kids who'd never faced anything harder than a college exam. If Marcus was going to do this, if he was going to make his last ride count, he needed brothers who understood why some hills were worth dying on. The call connected after 3 rings. Ironside's voice came through rough with sleep and decades of cigarette smoke. Marcus, it's not even 6 in the morning. Someone better be dead. Not yet. Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. But I'm calling in every marker, every promise, every oath we took about leaving no one behind. Silence stretched across the line. Then Ironside's breathing changed, shifted into something focused and alert. Combat awareness kicking in decades after the last bullet flew. Talk to me. So Marcus did. He told Ironside about Maya sitting with a new kid at school because he reminded her of Elena, quiet and artistic and too gentle for a world that rewarded aggression. About Brandon Marshall, 14 years old and untouchable, because his father's law firm had the school board terrified of litigation. About Liam Chen stepping between 3 attackers and a girl he barely knew taking hit after hit while screaming for Maya to run. About the principal's office, where Maya got suspended for mutual combat, while Brandon got detention, where the system bent itself into knots protecting money instead of honor. About an 11-year-old boy in ICU while his attacker walked free. When Marcus finished, the line stayed quiet long enough that he thought the call had dropped. Then Ironside spoke, and his voice carried the weight of shared history, shared wounds, shared understanding that sometimes the world needed men willing to stand when standing cost everything. Remember what we promised Hawk at his funeral? Die with boots on, Marcus said. This is it, brother. This is how we keep that promise. How many you need? Everyone, Marcus said, staring at Hawk's unfinished bike. Every brother who remembers why we wear these patches. Every man who's tired of watching courage get crushed by cowardice. Every warrior who's got one more fight left before the final ride. I'll make calls, Ironside said. We ride at dawn. But Marcus, we're old men. Some of us won't make this ride easy. Hell, my knees are shot. Gotta stop every hour to piss. Takes me 5 minutes to get off my bike without looking like I'm gonna fall over. Then we ride slow and arrive together. That's what brotherhood means. The line went quiet again, but this time Marcus heard something in the background. Ironside's wife asking questions, her voice rising with concern and resignation. She knew what was coming. 40 years married to a warrior meant understanding when your husband received orders that couldn't be refused. Give me 3 hours, Ironside finally said. I'll have Pittsburgh mobilized and make calls to Baltimore, Philly, Cleveland. You want this done right, you need chapters from 5 states. You need old guard and young bucks. You need enough bikes that when we roll into that town, every single person understands that what happened to Liam Chen wasn't acceptable. Marcus's chest tightened with gratitude and grief. This was it. The moment when theory became action, when promises made at gravesides transformed into consequences in the real world. Once he said yes, once Ironside made those calls, there was no walking it back. This would be his last ride one way or another. Do it, Marcus said. Semper Fi, brother. The call ended. Marcus sat in his office surrounded by 40 years of accumulated history photo and patches, and trophies from runs to Sturgis and Daytona plaques, from charity rides and veteran memorials, letters from kids his chapter had mentored through rough neighborhoods. All of it testament to a simple philosophy. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Stand up when standing up costs something. Never walk away when someone needs you. His phone lit up with incoming calls before he'd even set it down. Raymond Doc Foster from Baltimore, former Marine Corps medic who'd saved 19 lives in Fallujah and never talked about the ones he couldn't save. Antonio Ghost Martinez from Cleveland Army Ranger, who'd lost both parents to gang violence and spent 30 years making sure other kids didn't follow that path. Dexter Dex Williams from Philadelphia Navy SEAL, who ran a youth center in one of the roughest neighborhoods on the East Coast and refused to let zip codes determine destinies. Each call followed the same pattern. Marcus explained, they listened, they committed without hesitation. The mathematics built in his head as dawn crept through the garage windows. Pittsburgh sending 87 riders, average age 65 Vietnam vets, and older who remembered when their word meant something. Baltimore contributing 78 mostly Gulf War generation, with a handful of Korea vets refusing to miss the fight. Cleveland organizing 112 spanning 4 decades from Mobutu down to Iraq. Philadelphia mobilizing 95 heavy on Afghanistan vets who'd seen what happened when good men did nothing. By 7:30 a.m., the count stood at 620 riders, confirmed with more calling in every 15 minutes as word spread through the network. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. She'd stayed home yesterday after the suspension quiet and withdrawn in a way that reminded him too much of Elena's last months. But this morning's message carried steel instead of sorrow. Dad, I'm going with you. Whatever you're planning, I'm going. He stared at those words torn between paternal protection and pride. Maya was 12, old enough to understand consequences, young enough to still believe the world could be changed by showing up. Elena would have let her ride. Elena would have insisted on it, actually would have said that witnessing courage was how you learned to practice it. Marcus typed back, pack a bag, warm clothes, we leave in 2 hours. The next call came from Frank Pops, Morrison Hawk's older brother, a man who should have been dead 5 times over and refused to cooperate with statistics. 82 years old Normandy veteran walked with a cane but rode a 1952 Panhead that he maintained with religious devotion. Marcus, we heard you're staging something. Count me in. Pops, you're 82. Your doctor said my doctor says lots of things. I was at Omaha Beach. I'm not missing this. Arguing with Pops was like arguing with gravity, futile and ultimately beside the point. Marcus simply added him to the count and made a mental note to assign younger brothers to keep watch. If Pops fell during the ride, if his heart gave out, or his bike broke down, they'd carry him to the destination on their shoulders if necessary. By 8:00 a.m., Marcus stood in his garage staring at the map spread across his workbench. Springdale sat 90 miles west of Philadelphia, accessible via 3 main roads, all of them 2-lane highways through Pennsylvania farmland. The logistics of moving 600-plus motorcycles through rural roads required military precision, formation, leaders, road captains, communication protocols, contingency plans for breakdowns and medical emergencies. His phone rang again, this time an unknown number, local area code. Marcus answered, expecting another brother confirming attendance. Instead, a woman's voice came through, hesitant and heavily accented. Mr. Rodriguez. This is Sarah Chen, Liam's mother. I hope it's okay I call. The hospital gave me your number from yesterday's visitor log. Mrs. Chen. Marcus said, his throat suddenly tight. How is he surgery in 1 hour? They will fix the nose put plate in his cheek. Doctor says he will heal, but there will be scars. Permanent scars. On his face where everyone can see. Her voice broke on those last words, and Marcus heard the weight of every immigrant parent's nightmare working themselves to exhaustion to give their child a better life, only to watch that life get damaged by a system that didn't value their sacrifice. Mrs. Chen, I'm going to make this right. How she asked, and the question carried decades of learned helplessness, of being told that people like her didn't get justice, that working-class families didn't win against lawyers and money. How can you fix system that protects rich people? How can you change school that cares more about donations than children? Marcus looked around his garage at all the photos, all the brothers, all the accumulated proof that sometimes showing up mattered more than winning. By showing them what they're up against if they keep failing kids like Liam. By making them understand that some of us still believe courage should be honored, not punished. But Mr. Rodriguez, Marcus, he interrupted gently. Call me Marcus. And Mrs. Chen, I need you to trust me. Today is going to be loud. It's going to be visible. It's going to scare some people. But I promise you not one person will be harmed. We're not coming for revenge. We're coming to educate. Silence stretched across the line. Then Sarah Chen's voice came back, still uncertain, but threaded with something that might have been hope. Liam keeps asking if Maya, though, is okay, even now, after everything he worries about her first. That's the kind of courage that deserves to be protected. Tell Liam that Maya's fine. Tell him 600 brothers are riding to make sure the school understands what they did. Tell him real courage doesn't go unnoticed. The call ended. Marcus checked the time, 8:45 a.m. The ride would begin at 5:00 a.m. tomorrow, giving chapters time to mobilize, giving him time to coordinate logistics, giving the Chens time to process what was about to happen. He walked outside into morning light that felt simultaneously too bright and not bright enough. His truck sat in the lot, Maya already in the passenger seat, wearing her mother's leather jacket. She'd pulled her dark hair back in a ponytail, her face set in an expression Marcus recognized from the mirror, determination mixed with grief, resolve built on loss. They drove to County Hospital in silence. Maya stared out the window, processing whatever thoughts 12-year-olds had when their world got turned violent. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, trying to ignore the pain radiating through his hip and the tremor in his hands that got worse under stress. The ICU waiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. David Chen sat hunched in a plastic chair, his nurse's scrubs wrinkled from an all-night vigil. Sarah paced near the window, her pharmacy tech uniform equally rumpled. They both looked up when Marcus and Maya entered, their expressions cycling through wariness and exhaustion before landing on something like gratitude. Maya ran to Sarah, wrapped her arms around the woman, and started crying. Not the loud sobbing of a child, but the quiet, devastating tears of someone learning that the world was crueler than they'd imagined. Sarah held her, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances in Mandarin that Marcus didn't understand but recognized as universal mother language. David approached slowly, studying Marcus with a careful assessment of someone who'd learned to evaluate threats. He was shorter than Marcus by 6 inches, lean in the way of people who worked too hard and ate too little, his eyes carrying the particular exhaustion of immigrants who traded everything familiar for a promise that kept breaking. "Thank you for coming," David said. "Liam is in surgery now. Doctor says 2 hours." Marcus shook his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength hidden in that slight frame. "I meant what I said yesterday. This isn't right. The school failing him isn't right. I'm going to change it." David's expression flickered between skepticism and desperate hope. "Mr. Rodriguez Marcus, I appreciate this, but you cannot change system. We have tried, we file complaint with school. They say it is he said, she said. We ask for meeting with superintendent. They say wait for investigation. We ask when investigation finishes. They say it takes time. Always more time. Always more excuses. What if I don't ask permission?" David frowned, not understanding. "What do you mean?" Marcus sat in the chair beside him, feeling every one of his 62 years, every ache and pain and scar. "Tomorrow morning at dawn, 637 motorcycles are riding to Springdale. Brothers from 5 states. Vietnam vets, Gulf War vets, Iraq and Afghanistan vets, guys who have been riding together for decades. We're going to park in front of that school and request a school-wide assembly." David's eyes widened. "You cannot do that. They will call police. They will say you are threatening them. We're not threatening anyone. We're educating them." "There's a difference," Sarah joined them, Maya still clinging to her side. She'd heard enough to understand the basics, and her expression showed the same conflict Marcus had seen in David's face. Hope warring with experience, desperate belief that maybe this time things could be different. "Why?" she asked. "Why do this for us? You don't know Liam. You don't owe us anything." Marcus looked at Maya, then back at the Chens. "Because my daughter was sitting alone in that cafeteria before Liam invited her to join him. Because he saw someone isolated and decided that mattered. Because when 3 bigger boys wanted to hurt her, he stepped in front, even though he knew what it would cost him. That's the kind of courage men twice his age don't show." He paused, gathering words that felt inadequate for what he was trying to express. "I lost my wife 5 years ago. Cancer. She made me promise before she died that I'd never let Maya forget what it means to stand up, that I wouldn't let this world make her small. Yesterday, Liam showed her what standing up looks like. He showed her that size doesn't matter, that strength isn't about muscles, that real courage is protecting someone even when you're terrified." Marcus's voice roughened emotion, breaking through the control he'd maintained. If I don't honor that, if I let Brandon Marshall walk away from this like it never happened, if I let the school keep protecting money over decency, then I'm teaching Maya that courage is stupid, that being brave just gets you hurt, that the bullies always win. And I can't do that. I won't do that. David studied him for a long moment, reading past the leather vest and tattoos to something deeper. Finally, he nodded slowly. What do you need from us? Just be there. Bring Liam if the doctors clear him. Let him see that what he did mattered. Let him see that there are men who still believe courage deserves to be honored. The conversation shifted to logistics, to practical details about timing and transportation. But beneath it ran currents of understanding that transcended language and culture, parents recognizing each other's desperation, warriors acknowledging shared codes, strangers becoming allies because a child had shown them what honor looked like. Marcus's phone buzzed continuously throughout. Brothers checking in, confirming routes, asking questions about formation. By noon, the count had reached 637 confirmed riders, with another dozen possibles, pending work schedules and health clearances. One text stopped him cold. From Doc Foster in Baltimore, a photo attachment showing an elderly man Marcus hadn't seen in 15 years. Benjamin Ben Krause, 94 years old, Ubasur II veteran who'd fought at Bastonia, who'd received the Silver Star for holding a position against impossible odds while his brothers escaped. Ben stood beside a vintage Harley Skeletal and determined, his leather vest drowning his frame, but his eyes burning with purpose. Doc's text explained Bennett heard about the ride. Says he's coming. I tried to talk him out of it. Marcus, he's 94. Heart condition, lung shot. But he says if this is about honoring courage, he's not missing it. What do you want me to do? Marcus stared at that photo for 5 full minutes, remembering stories Ben had told decades ago about watching friends die in snow, about holding lines when retreat made more sense, about the promise soldiers made to each other that their sacrifices would mean something. Ben had survived the worst humanity could inflict, had built a life from wreckage, had spent 70 years teaching younger generations what his generation had learned in blood. And now he wanted to ride one more time. Marcus typed back, bring him, assign 2 brothers to flank him. If his bike breaks down, if his health fails, we stop the whole convoy. He rides with us or we don't ride at all. Doc's response came immediately. Copy that. He'll be there. The afternoon disappeared into coordination. Marcus called Principal Hawkins, his voice carrying polite menace that years of command had perfected. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, 637 members of the Brotherhood would be requesting use of the school gymnasium for an assembly. Not demanding, requesting. But the request came with the understanding that refusal would mean 637 motorcycles parked outside, making their point through presence alone. Hawkins stammered objections, insurance concerns, safety protocols, district policy about outside speakers. Marcus let him sputter before delivering the reality check. Principal Hawkins, you have 2 options. Option 1, let us use the gymnasium for 1 hour, during which we'll discuss the importance of courage and the consequences of failing to protect children who demonstrate it. Option 2, 637 motorcycles park outside your school, and we have the exact same conversation in your parking lot with local and national media documenting everything. Your call. The line went silent for so long Marcus thought Hawkins had hung up. Then came the defeated response. 7:30 a.m. 1 hour. But Mr. Rodriguez, if there's any violence, any threats, I'm calling the police immediately. There won't be any violence. We don't operate that way. We're just going to educate you on what real strength looks like. Marcus ended the call and immediately contacted media outlets. Local news stations, regional newspapers, independent journalists he'd worked with on previous veteran causes. The pitch was simple: 600-plus Vietnam-era veterans writing to honor a child's courage. Human interest story. Celebration of valor. No promises about what else might be discussed, but enough to guarantee cameras would be present. By 4:00 p.m., his phone held confirmations from 4 news stations, 3 newspapers, and 2 documentary filmmakers. Whatever happened tomorrow would be witnessed, recorded, and distributed. The school couldn't sweep this under their usual rug of wealth and litigation threats. Maya found him in the garage at 6:00 p.m., still coordinating final details. She'd changed from the leather jacket into regular clothes, looking simultaneously too young and too old for what was coming. "Dad," she said quietly, "is Liam going to be okay?" "Physically, yes, the surgery went well. He'll heal. But emotionally, mentally, that's going to take time. Trauma doesn't fix as easily as broken bones." She nodded, processing that. "Is tomorrow going to be scary? For some people, yes. For Principal Hawkins, definitely. For Brandon Marshall, absolutely. But scary isn't the same as dangerous. We're not going there to hurt anyone. We're going there to make sure everyone understands that what Liam did was heroic and what Brandon did was unacceptable, and what the school did by protecting the bully instead of the hero was a complete failure of their responsibility." Maya moved closer, studying the map on his workbench, the formation plans, the communication protocols. "Mom would have loved this, wouldn't she?" Marcus's throat tightened. "Your mother would have been on her bike leading the charge. She never backed down from protecting kids who needed it. Half the reason she married me was because I understood that some things matter more than comfort." "Tell me the story again." "About Vietnam." It was a ritual between them, a way Marcus had found to make sense of the worst years of his life by transforming them into lessons for his daughter. He pulled her close, breathing in her shampoo smell that still carried echoes of Elena's choices, and spoke. "I was 19, barely older than you are now, though I thought I was a man. They dropped us in Da Nang with rifles and terror and orders to secure positions that couldn't be secured. I watched friends die. I watched villages burn. I watched the rules of civilization evaporate in the jungle heat. But here's what I learned, baby. The only thing that kept us human was deciding to be human. When we had to choose between leaving a wounded brother or risking death to save him, we chose risk. When we had to choose between becoming monsters or staying decent, some of us chose decency. Not all of us. War breaks some men into pieces they can't reassemble. But the ones who came home, still human, we did it by protecting each other. By refusing to let the horror make us cruel. That's what Liam did yesterday. The world gave him an easy choice. Walk away, stay safe, let someone else handle it. But he chose the hard thing. He chose to be human even when being human hurt. Maya leaned against him, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility that came with raising a child in a world determined to teach it all the wrong lessons. Tomorrow wasn't just about Liam Chen or Brandon Marshall or a failing school system. It was about showing Maya, showing every kid who'd hear this story, that courage still mattered, that standing up still made a difference, that the bullies didn't always win if enough good people refused to walk away. His phone lit up one final time before midnight. A text from Ironside containing a single photo. 87 motorcycles staged in a Pittsburgh parking lot, their riders standing in formation, gray beards and weathered faces and eyes that had seen too much death to fear causing a scene at a middle school. The caption read, "Ready to ride, ready to show them what the old guard still remembers. Semper Fi, brother." Marcus sent back 5 a.m. departure. "Stay tight. This is our last ride. Make it count." He slept 3 hours fitful and interrupted by dreams of rice patties and Elena's last smile and Liam Chen's broken face. When his alarm buzzed at 3:30 a.m., he rose with the certainty that comes from accepting consequences before actions. Today would change everything or nothing, but either way, he'd keep the promise made at Hawk's graveside. Die with your boots on. Make your last ride count. The garage smelled different at 400 a.m., sharper, more focused, like the universe itself understood something important was building. Marcus dressed carefully, each piece of clothing carrying significance. Jeans worn soft from 10,000 miles. Boots that had walked through 3 wars worth of veteran memorials. The leather vest with every patch earned through blood or brotherhood, each one a story he could recite from memory. Maya emerged from her room wearing Elena's jacket, and Marcus had to look away before emotion unmanned him. She looked so much like her mother. Same determined jaw, same refusal to accept injustice quietly, same absolute certainty that showing up mattered. They rode together through pre-dawn darkness to Old Miller's Field, the staging ground 2 miles outside Springdale. As they crested the final hill, Marcus's breath caught. 637 motorcycles filled the field in perfect formation, organized by chapter and age, their chrome catching moonlight in patterns that looked like constellation maps. Brothers stood beside their bikes, breath visible in October cold leather and denim and flags creating a tapestry of shared purpose. Ironside limped forward, his face breaking into a grin that transcended pain. "We're here, brother. Every single one of us. Even old Ben made the ride from Baltimore. It took him 9 hours with stops, but he's here." Marcus scanned the formation, his eyes landing on Ben Krause. The 94-year-old stood ramrod straight beside his vintage Harley, flanked by two younger brothers, his face carved from granite and resolve. Their eyes met across 50 yards, and Ben raised one skeletal hand in salute. Marcus returned it, his vision blurring. This was it. The last ride. The final mission. 637 warriors spanning 8 decades of service and sacrifice, united by the belief that an 11-year-old boy's courage deserved more than hospital bills and bureaucratic indifference. He climbed onto his truck bed, surveying the brotherhood assembled before him. The pre-dawn darkness was lifting, first light touching chrome and leather, and Marcus understood why soldiers throughout history had described this feeling the moment before action, when commitment became kinetic, when promises transformed into consequences. His voice carried across the field, without amplification, command presence earned through decades of leading men who didn't follow easily. Brothers, some of you rode all night to be here. Some of you are on medications that say don't operate heavy machinery, and here you are on 2 wheels anyway. Some of you are in pain right now, joints screaming, hearts struggling, bodies reminding you that you're old and broken and should be in rocking chairs instead of staging what might look like an invasion. Why? Because 3 days ago, an 11-year-old boy named Liam Chen did what we were all trained to do. He saw someone vulnerable. He saw someone under attack. And he stepped between the danger and the victim, taking damage meant for someone else. That's what warriors do. That's what men of honor do. That's what we were taught before the world forgot those lessons. And the system, the school, the adults whose job is protecting children, they punished him. They protected his attacker because daddy's got money and threats and the ability to make problems disappear. They suspended my daughter for defending him. They gave the bully detention. Marcus paused, letting fury and grief mix in his voice. I'm 62 years old. I got shrapnel in my hip from Da Nang. I got stents keeping my heart running. My prostate's trying to kill me. Most mornings I wake up wondering if I've got 5 years left or 5 months. But I cannot die in a world where courage gets punished because it's inconvenient for rich people. I will not let my daughter grow up believing that standing up is stupid, that helping others just gets you hurt, that the only thing that matters is money and connections and the ability to threaten lawsuits. So we ride. Not for revenge, not for violence. We ride to educate a town about what real strength looks like. We ride to show a school what happens when you protect in cowardice instead of courage. We ride to honor Liam Chen and make damn sure he knows his courage mattered. Rules of engagement, perfect formation, military precision, silence, as our weapon presence, as our message. No violence, no threats, not even raised voices. We're warriors, not thugs. We know the difference, even if they don't. Any questions? Ben Krause's voice cut through the morning air, surprisingly strong for a 94-year-old. Marcus, I was at Bastogne. I'm here today. What's one more line to hold? The brotherhood erupted, not in noise, but in unity. 637 men, straightening mounting bikes, checking equipment with practiced efficiency. This was what civilians didn't understand about military brotherhood. This was what lawyers and principals and rich bullies couldn't comprehend. This was iron forged in fire, tested by death, proven across generations. They mounted bikes in perfect synchronization. 637 engines started as one, creating thunder that shook ground and sky. Then in formation that would make parade commanders weep with envy, they rolled toward Springdale. Marcus led Maya in the sidecar, attached to his bike, her face set with determination that looked exactly like Elena's last ride. Behind him, Ironside commanded the Vietnam generation, gray beards and purple hearts, and men who'd seen the worst humanity offered. Behind them, Doc Foster led Gulf War veterans, then Ghost with Iraq and Afghanistan, then Dex with the youngest generation kids who joined the Brotherhood seeking something their broken homes couldn't provide. They rode at exactly 45 miles per hour, the posted limit, perfect spacing. Between bikes, road captains, maintaining formation through hand signals older than half the riders. State police monitored their progress, radioing reports that grew increasingly odd. No speeding, No reckless driving, no violations of any kind. Just overwhelming, undeniable presence moving with single purpose toward a small town that had failed a child's courage. Marcus's hands ached from gripping handlebars. His hips screamed protests. His heart did things that should have sent him to an ER. But he rode through pain fueled by fury and love, and the absolute certainty that this mattered, that showing up counted, that 637 brothers arriving at dawn would change the equation. The sun crested the horizon as they entered Springdale. Morning light caught chrome and flags, transforming the convoy into something that looked biblical, an army of angels or demons, depending on your perspective, judgment arriving on two wheels and rumbling exhaust. Town residents emerged from homes in bathrobes in confusion. A Vietnam vet recognized the formation, stood at attention on his lawn, saluted as they passed. A young mother clutched her child, uncertain whether to flee or film. A cop's hand moved toward his radio, then stopped as he registered the discipline, the organization, the flags declaring these men had already served their country. They turned onto Main Street. Springdale Middle School materialized ahead, and Marcus saw Principal Hawkins standing at the entrance, coffee cup frozen halfway to lips, face draining of color as he processed what was arriving. At precisely 7:30 a.m., Marcus raised his hand. 637 engines cut simultaneously. The silence that followed was profound, disturbed only by the tick of cooling metal and the rapid breathing of a town holding its collective breath. No one spoke. No one needed to. The message was clear in chrome and leather and weathered faces and flags that had flown over foreign soil stained with American blood. We are here, we are watching, and things are about to change. Principal Hawkins dropped his coffee cup. The ceramic shattered on concrete, splashing brown liquid across his polished shoes, but he didn't notice. His eyes were locked on Main Street, where 637 motorcycles had materialized like a fever dream, given chrome and leather. Marcus dismounted slowly, his hip protesting every movement, and removed his helmet with deliberate care. Behind him, the Brotherhood followed suit in perfect synchronization. Helms coming off kickstands, engaging boots, hitting pavement in a rhythm that sounded like military drums. No rush, no aggression, just inexorable forward movement of men who'd already decided the outcome before arriving. Maya climbed from the sidecar, straightening Elena's jacket, her 12-year-old frame trying to project confidence while her hands trembled slightly. Marcus touched her shoulder once, grounding, then began walking toward the school entrance. The Brotherhood fell into formation behind him, Ironside and the Vietnam generation first, then cascading backward through decades of service, creating a human wedge of gray beards and battle scars and absolute conviction. Hawkins found his voice somewhere between terror and administrative panic. "Mr. Rodriguez, you can't, this isn't, we discussed 1 hour in the gymnasium. Not an invasion of, not an invasion," Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying across the parking lot without effort. "A visit. 637 concerned citizens exercising their right to address issues at a public school. You agreed to provide the gymnasium. We're here to use it. But the number I didn't realize insurance doesn't cover. Then we'll have the conversation outside. Makes no difference to us. But either way, Principal Hawkins, we're going to discuss what happened to Liam Chen and why your school chose to protect his attacker instead of honoring his courage." Teachers began arriving for their shifts, vehicles slowing to crawls as drivers processed the scene. Mrs. Patterson, Liam's homeroom teacher, parked her sedan and approached with the careful deliberation of someone entering a minefield. She'd taught for 23 years, long enough to recognize when authority had shifted, when the normal rules no longer applied. "Principal Hawkins," she said quietly, "maybe we should do what they're asking. These men look like veterans. This looks organized, not dangerous." Hawkins rounded on her. "You want me to just capitulate to what Marcus asked, stepping closer but not threatening his proximity alone, making Hawkins retreat. To men who bled for this country, asking why you're failing a child who showed more courage in 30 seconds than you've shown in your entire career." The arrival of police cruisers punctured the tension momentarily. Officer Ramirez emerged from the first vehicle, hand near his weapon, but not on it, his eyes scanning the formation with professional assessment. Marcus recognized the body language, military training, probably Iraq or Afghanistan, the stance of someone who'd faced actual threats and understood this wasn't one. "Sir," Ramirez said, addressing Marcus with instinctive respect, "I need to understand the situation here. We received calls about a large motorcycle gathering potentially intimidating school staff. No intimidation, officer. Marcus gestured to the Brotherhood. We requested use of the school gymnasium for an assembly. Principal Hawkins agreed. We're simply here to fulfill that arrangement. Ramirez looked to Hawkins for confirmation. The principal's face cycled through options before landing on defeated acceptance. He did request. I agreed to 1 hour. But officer, the number. How many laws are being broken? Ramirez interrupted. Any weapons visible, any threats made, any actual disruption beyond presence. Hawkins opened his mouth, closed, it opened it again like a fish drowning in air. No, but the implication. There's no implication, Ramirez said, his tone shifting from official to personal. Sir, I see Purple Hearts on those vests. I see service patches spanning Vietnam to Afghanistan. These men aren't here to hurt anyone. They're here to be heard. And honestly, after what happened to the Chen kid, maybe someone needs to hear them. The calculation in Hawkins' eyes was transparent. Deny access and create a spectacle that would dominate news cycles or allow the assembly and hope to control the narrative. He chose survival over principle, as Marcus had known he would. Fine, 1 hour, gymnasium. But Mr. Rodriguez, any disruption, any violence, and I'm ending this immediately. There won't be any violence, Marcus said. We're just going to educate you on what real strength looks like. The school's morning routine fractured under the weight of unprecedented events. Students arriving by bus pressed faces against windows, phones emerging to document the sea of motorcycles. Parents dropping off children hesitated at the parking lot entrance, uncertain whether to flee or investigate. Word spread through text messages and social media. Something massive happening at Springdale Middle Bikers, everywhere, nobody knows why. The gymnasium filled in stages. Students herded in by nervous teachers, arranged by grade-level conversations, hushed by the presence of 637 men lining the walls in 3 deep rows. The visual impact was overwhelming. Basketball court ringed by leather and patches, teenage energy, subdued by the gravity of weathered faces that had seen actual violence and chose restraint. Marcus stood court center waiting for the space to fill, using silence as a weapon more effective than words. Beside him, Maya sat in a folding chair, visible reminder of why this mattered. The Chens arrived escorted by Mrs. Patterson, David and Sarah supporting Liam between them, the boy's face a patchwork of purple bruising and white bandages, his steps careful and painful. The Brotherhood parted to let them through, creating an honor corridor of sorts, and Marcus saw several older veterans wipe eyes as Liam passed. This child's 70 pounds and 11 years old, face broken, but spirit somehow intact, embodied everything they'd been taught to protect and honor. Liam was seated front row beside Maya, and the 2 children clasped hands with the fierce grip of survivors recognizing each other. Sarah Chen sobbed quietly. David's jaw clenched so tight Marcus heard teeth grinding from 20 feet away. The final attendees arrived with the arrogance of people accustomed to power. Richard Marshall Esquire in his tailored suit and practiced authority, his wife Patricia in tennis whites that screamed privilege and inconvenience. Their son Brandon walked between them, 14 years old, and attempting bravado his eyes couldn't support when faced with 637 men who'd stopped caring about consequences decades ago. Brandon's friends, Tyler and Cade, shuffled behind with their parents, a united front of wealth and entitlement that had worked so well in the principal's office 3 days prior. But the gymnasium wasn't the principal's office. The equation had changed. Marcus waited until the doors closed, until the last whisper died, until 800 people, students, teachers, parents, Brotherhood, held collective breath, waiting for whatever came next. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the command presence of men who'd led soldiers through fire. My name is Marcus Rodriguez. I'm Maya Rodriguez's father. I'm also a Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart recipient, and vice president of my Brotherhood chapter for 35 years. Behind me stand 637 men, veterans, fathers, grandfathers, who rode through the night to be here this morning. We came because 3 days ago, something happened in your cafeteria that matters more than any of you seem to understand. He paused, letting silence amplify importance. Liam Chen, an 11-year-old 6th grader who weighs 70 pounds and prefers drawing to fighting, saw my daughter Maya being cornered by 3 8th graders. He saw Brandon Marshall grab her, shove her, mock her for being different. He saw 2 friends join in circling, escalating, enjoying the power imbalance. And Liam did something extraordinary. He stepped between them. He told them to leave Maya alone. He placed his small body between violence and victim, knowing absolutely that he couldn't win, that he'd get hurt, that courage would cost him everything. Marcus's voice hardened, and he was right. Brandon Marshall broke his nose, fractured his cheekbone, gave him a concussion that required hospitalization and surgery. Liam took every hit meant for my daughter, screaming at her to run, while his own blood poured onto cafeteria tile. The gymnasium sat frozen, every eye on Liam's bandaged face, the physical evidence, making Marcus's words visceral and undeniable. Even Brandon Marshall had stopped attempting bravado, his face pale and uncertain under paternal glare that suggested Richard was calculating legal exposure rather than moral failure. You know what happened next, Marcus continued. The school administration suspended Maya for mutual combat. They gave Brandon Marshall detention. Detention. For hospitalizing a child half his size who was protecting someone from assault. His gaze swept the room, landing on teachers who'd failed to supervise administrators, who'd failed to protect parents, who'd raised children to weaponize privilege. When we called to discuss this, we were told boys will be boys. We were told it was a schoolyard scuffle. We were told the Marshall family's attorney preferred handling things internally. That ends today. Richard Marshall stood, his lawyer instincts kicking toward confrontation. Now wait just 1 minute. You can't come into a school and... Sit down, Marcus said, his voice dropping to dangerous quiet that men who'd faced combat recognized as final warning. You had your chance to do the right thing. You chose to protect your son from consequences instead of teaching him accountability. Now you're going to sit there and listen while we educate this entire school on what real strength looks like. Richard Marshall's mouth worked soundlessly. His wife touched his arm, her expression suggesting she understood the equation better than her husband. These men weren't subject to legal threats, weren't intimidated by money or social position, wouldn't back down because a lawyer said so. Richard sat, his face flushed with impotent fury. Marcus turned his attention to the students, especially the younger ones, watching with wide eyes. Real courage isn't about size. It isn't about muscles or aggression or the ability to hurt people weaker than you. Real courage is doing what's right when doing what's right costs you something. Liam showed real courage. He protected someone who needed protecting, knowing he'd pay the price. That's heroism in its purest form. That's the kind of character that deserves to be celebrated, not punished. Behind Marcus Ironside stepped forward, his limp pronounced, but his bearing military straight. I'm James Sullivan, Vietnam 173rd Airborne, 2 tours, Purple Heart. I'm 67 years old. My knees are destroyed. My lungs are scarred from Agent Orange. I take 16 pills every morning just to keep breathing. Yesterday, I rode 9 hours from Pittsburgh to be here. You know why? Because Liam Chen reminded me why I went to Vietnam in the first place. We were told we were protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. We were told courage mattered. Most of that turned out to be lies, but the principle underneath, that's still true. When you see someone vulnerable being attacked, you don't walk away. You don't calculate odds. You step up. Liam understood that at 11 years old. He understood what some of you adults have forgotten. Doc Foster moved forward, next his former medic, precision, evident in measured speech. Raymond Foster, Marine Corps, Fallujah, saved 19 lives, lost count of the ones I couldn't save. I'm 64. Heart condition. Doctor says I shouldn't ride anymore, should definitely not be taking 9-hour trips on a motorcycle. But here's the thing, when Marcus called and told me about a kid who took a beating protecting someone else, I couldn't not come. Because in Fallujah, I watched Marines throw themselves on grenades to save their brothers. I watched men run into fire to drag wounded to safety. I watched courage cost lives. Liam didn't die, thank God, but he paid in blood and pain and scars he'll carry forever. And your response was to protect his attacker because daddy's got money. That's not just wrong. That's a betrayal of everything we're supposed to teach children about right and wrong. One by one, veterans stepped forward. Ghost Martinez talking about losing parents to gang violence, about spending 30 years making sure other kids didn't follow that path, about recognizing Liam's courage as the antidote to the poison of accepted bullying. Dex Williams describing his youth center in Philadelphia, the countless kids he'd mentored, who needed exactly the message Liam embodied: standing up matters, courage counts, protecting others is worth the cost. And then Pops Morrison shuffled forward with his cane, 94 years old, and defying mortality through sheer determination. His voice carried the weight of liberation. I'm Frank Morrison, Normandy, Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944. I'm 94 years old. I shouldn't be alive. Most of my unit died in the first 10 minutes. But I'm here today because 79 years ago, thousands of men decided that stopping evil was worth dying for. We stormed that beach knowing most of us wouldn't survive. We did it anyway. You know why? Because someone has to stand between tyranny and innocence. Someone has to be willing to take the damage meant for others. Someone has to show the bullies that they don't always win. Liam Chen is 11 years old and he showed more courage in 30 seconds than most grown men show in a lifetime. He reminded me why all those boys died on Omaha Beach, so kids like him could grow up safe. And you people nearly destroyed him for it. The gymnasium had gone silent enough to hear individual breathing, 800 people processing the accumulated testimony of men who'd earned the right to speak about courage through decades of proving it. Marcus let the silence build, let the weight settle, then delivered the next phase. The Brotherhood has established a scholarship fund for Liam Chen. We're putting him through college full ride, every penny from middle school support through bachelor's degree. Because courage like his deserves to be rewarded, not punished. Gasps rippled through students and parents. Sarah Chen's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming. David's shoulders shook with emotion he couldn't contain. Liam looked confused, young enough not to fully comprehend the magnitude, but old enough to understand something significant had shifted. We're also donating $50,000 to this school's anti-bullying program. Marcus continued watching faces light up before delivering the condition that would change everything. With one requirement, real consequences for bullies regardless of how much money their parents have. Zero tolerance means zero tolerance. If you assault another student, you face suspension. If warranted, expulsion. Where appropriate, legal consequences. Your last name doesn't buy immunity. Your father's law firm doesn't erase what you did. Actions have consequences, and it's time this school remembered that. Principal Hawkins sat frozen, recognizing the trap. Accept the donation and the conditions, or refuse and explain to the school board and media why $50,000 was rejected. Either choice meant the end of protecting privilege over principle. Richard Marshall stood again, his composure cracking. You can't come in here and dictate school policy. You can't use money to. We're not dictating, Marcus interrupted. We're donating with conditions. The school can refuse, but they'll refuse in front of 637 witnesses, 4 news crews, and a community that's going to ask why protecting your son from accountability mattered more than $50,000 for every other student's safety. Marshall's face purpled. This is extortion. This is consequences, Ironside said, stepping beside Marcus. Something you've apparently spent 14 years helping your son avoid. That ends today. Marcus turned his attention to Brandon Marshall, the boy shrinking in his seat under the weight of 637 sets of eyes carrying combat veteran assessment of character and finding it catastrophically lacking. Brandon Marshall, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the gymnasium like judgment itself. Step forward, bring your 2 friends. The 3 boys froze, trapped between parental expectations and the crushing reality of being called out in front of the entire school. Richard Marshall moved to stand to protect, to lawyer his way out. But Pops Morrison's cane tapped the floor, once sharp, definitive, and Richard sat back down. Some authorities transcended law degrees. Brandon rose on shaking legs, Tyler and Cade following their bravado from the cafeteria extinct under the pressure of accountability. They walked to center court like condemned prisoners. Each step an eternity, 637 men watching without sympathy or mercy. Marcus didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You hurt someone weaker because you could. You saw a small kid protecting someone vulnerable and decided to destroy him for it. That doesn't make you strong. That doesn't make you tough. That makes you a coward. The word hung in air like an execution. Brandon's face crumpled, tears forming despite desperate attempts at control. Tyler looked at his shoes. Cade's hands trembled visibly. We're a brotherhood because we protect the weak, Marcus continued. We stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. We use whatever strength we have to make sure the vulnerable are safe. That's what real men do. That's what real strength looks like. What you did, that's weakness. That's what happens when you have power but no character. Richard Marshall tried one more time, his voice cracking. My son is 14 years old. You can't humiliate him like this in front of your son, hospitalized an 11-year-old, Doc Foster interrupted. He broke bones. He caused trauma that'll take years to heal. And you think the worst thing that can happen to him is embarrassment? You think being called a coward in public is worse than what Liam Chen experienced? The gymnasium had become a courtroom verdict, already decided sentence being delivered through the accumulated moral authority of men who'd earned the right to judge through decades of choosing courage over comfort. Brandon Marcus said, "You're going to apologize to Liam in front of everyone here, and it's going to be real." Brandon's voice came out broken. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. You were trying to help Maya and I was angry and I didn't think, and I'm sorry. Not good enough, Ironside said. Tell him why. Tell him what you learned. Brandon looked at his father seeking rescue that wouldn't come, then back at Liam's bandaged face. I learned, his voice cracked. I learned that being big doesn't make you strong. That hurting people weaker than you makes you weak. That you, Liam, you showed real courage and I showed none. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tyler and Cade followed with their own apologies, equally shaken, equally genuine fear, and dawning understanding that the social hierarchy they'd relied upon had collapsed under the weight of actual consequence. Marcus let the moment breathe before delivering the final piece. You have two choices from this moment forward. Learn from this, become better, prove you're more than your worst moment, or keep being cowards, keep using your size and your parents' money to hurt people. But understand, Liam has 637 brothers. Now, you touch him again, you go after Maya again, you target any kid in this school who can't defend themselves, and we'll be back. Not for violence, for accountability. And next time the whole nation will be watching. The assembly shifted, then transforming from confrontation into something unexpected. Students began approaching the brotherhood, curiosity replacing fear, questions replacing assumptions. A teenage girl asked an older vet about his patches. He explained each one patiently, talking about rides for charity, about supporting veteran causes, about the code that bound men across generations. Middle school boys gathered around Ghost Martinez, who told them about his youth center, about teaching kids that strength meant protecting community rather than dominating it. Teachers found themselves in conversations with men who held degrees and ran businesses and taught at universities, stereotypes crumbling under the reality of complex human beings who happened to ride motorcycles. Maya and Liam sat together watching the transformation, two children who'd catalyzed something larger than themselves through simple acts of courage and vulnerability. The gymnasium that had felt like a battlefield minutes earlier now felt like a bridge connecting worlds that had never tried to understand each other. Outside media crews documented everything: the motorcycles lined in perfect formation, the veterans explaining their mission, the community members emerging from initial fear into tentative support. By noon, the story would be regional. By evening, national. By tomorrow, viral: 637 veterans riding to honor a child's courage, demanding accountability from a system designed to protect privilege. Principal Hawkins approached Marcus as the assembly wound down, his face carrying defeat and resignation. The donation, the conditions all need school board approval, but given the circumstances, given the publicity, I don't see how they can refuse. They can't, Marcus confirmed, not without explaining why protecting future bullies matters more than $50,000. And Hawkins' new anti-bullying coordinator, someone who actually believes in consequences, someone who understands that courage deserves protection, not punishment. Hawkins nodded, beaten, impossibly grateful for it, possibly relieved that someone had finally made him do the right thing, even if he lacked the spine to choose it himself. The Brotherhood began departing in reverse formation, oldest first, as honor-dictated engines, starting in synchronized thunder that rattled windows and announced that something fundamental had shifted in Springdale's moral geography. Marcus was among the last to leave, walking with Liam and his parents toward the Chen family's vehicle. David Chen extended his hand, his grip strong despite exhaustion. Thank you. For everything, for making them see, for honoring our son. Marcus shook it, then knelt carefully beside Liam despite his hip's protests. Your family now, kid. 637 brothers have your back. You understand what that means. Liam nodded, his eyes bright behind bandages. It means courage matters. It means courage always matters. Marcus confirmed. It means standing up is never wrong, even when it costs you something. It means you're never alone as long as men who understand honor still breathe. He stood feeling every year an injury and mounted his bike where Maya waited in the sidecar. As they pulled away, he caught sight of Brandon Marshall, standing alone in the parking lot, his parents already in their Mercedes preparing to leave. The boy looked lost, destroyed, and possibly maybe beginning to understand the weight of consequences he'd avoided his entire life. Whether Brandon found redemption or doubled down on cowardice would determine his trajectory. But that was his choice now. The Brotherhood had done its part, shown up, spoken truth, demonstrated that courage got honored even when systems failed. The ride back to Old Miller's Field felt different from the arrival. Lighter somehow, despite physical exhaustion and emotional drainage. Brothers waved at each other as formations dispersed, returning to 5 states and regular lives, carrying the story of what happened when warriors decided one child's courage mattered enough to ride through the night. Marcus knew his body would punish him for this days of pain ahead, maybe weeks, possibly complications, from pushing too hard when his doctor had said slow down. But Elena's voice echoed in his memory, her final words about making his last ride count, about going out fighting for something that mattered. Today had mattered. The accumulated testimony of 637 men had mattered. Liam's courage had been honored. Brandon's cowardice had faced consequences. The school had been forced into accountability. And tomorrow, when the story went national, thousands more children would hear the message. Courage doesn't go unnoticed. Standing up still matters. And sometimes old warriors ride one more time to make sure heroes don't stand alone. The story hit regional news by 2 p.m. national by evening. Marcus watched it unfold from his garage, surrounded by the familiar smell of motor oil and the unfamiliar sensation of consequence, rippling beyond control. CNN led with, Vietnam vets ride for bullied hero. Fox countered with, motorcycle group confronts, school over student attack. MSNBC went for 637 brothers, when systems fail, warriors show up. Every angle told the same core truth. An 11-year-old's courage had mobilized an army, and a school that protected privilege over principle had been forced into accountability under the weight of 637 witnesses who refused to let cowardice win. Marcus's phone hadn't stopped vibrating since they'd left Springdale. Interview requests from morning shows, documentary filmmakers wanting to tell the full story, parents from across the country asking how to replicate the model in their districts. But the call that mattered most came at 6:47 p.m. from a number he didn't recognize, Baltimore area code. Mr. Rodriguez. This is Jennifer Okafor. I'm a social worker in Baltimore. My nephew was bullied for 3 years, beaten, mocked, pushed to the edge. The school did nothing. His parents filed complaints that went nowhere. Last month he tried to kill himself. He survived, but barely. Marcus's chest tightened. I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened. It happens every day, she said, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd fought losing battles too many times. But today something changed. My nephew saw the news coverage. He saw Liam Chen's face, saw 600 men showing up to say his courage mattered. And for the first time in months, he said something that gave me hope. He said, maybe standing up isn't stupid. The words hit Marcus like shrapnel, piercing through exhaustion into the place where purpose lived. That's why we rode, I know. And Mr. Rodriguez, there are thousands of kids like my nephew, thousands of families being told that bullying is just part of growing up, that boys will be boys, that the system will handle it even while the system actively protects the bullies. What you did today, it wasn't just for Liam. It was for every child who's been told their courage doesn't matter. She paused and Marcus heard papers rustling. I'm calling because I want to help expand this, make it national, create an actual infrastructure so when the next Liam Chen gets broken for protecting someone, there's a response mechanism, not just one chapter in one state, but a network, a brotherhood that spans the entire country. Marcus looked around his garage at decades of accumulated history, feeling the weight of what she was proposing. That's a massive undertaking. Coordination across states' legal structures, funding mechanisms, I know. I'm a social worker, not a miracle worker. But Mr. Rodriguez, today, you proved something. You proved that showing up matters. That visibility creates consequences. That even broken systems bend when enough good people refuse to accept injustice. What do you need from me? Your story, your voice, your willingness to let this become bigger than one ride. Because right now, the nation is watching. Right now, parents are Googling Brotherhood stand-up program. Right now, you have momentum that won't last unless we channel it into something permanent. Marcus rubbed his face, feeling every one of his 62 years. Give me 72 hours. I need to talk to my chapter to the brothers who rode today to Liam's family. If we do this, we do it right. Not a publicity stunt, not a media circus, a genuine support network that honors courage and demands accountability. 72 hours, Jennifer agreed. But Mr. Rodriguez, don't wait too long. Momentum dies fast. And there are kids right now tonight being beaten for standing up, being told their courage was stupid. They need to know what you showed Liam. And they need to know they're not alone. The call ended. Marcus sat in silence, broken only by the tick of cooling metal from his bike and the distant sound of Maya doing homework upstairs. Elena's journal lay on his workbench, open to the page about making his last ride count. But maybe she'd been wrong about it being his last. Maybe this was the beginning of something that would outlive him, that would carry forward after his heart finally gave out, or his cancer came back, or age simply claimed what war and time had been slowly taking. Ironside arrived an hour later, limping through the garage door with the deliberate movements of someone whose body had betrayed him decades ago, but whose will refused to acknowledge defeat. He carried a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses ritual from Vietnam, from nights when the only way to process what they'd seen was to sit in silence and let alcohol soften the edges. They drank without speaking for several minutes, letting the burns settle, letting the day's events marinate into something they could articulate. Finally, Ironside broke the silence. Doc called me. Said Jennifer Okafor from Baltimore wants to nationalize what we did. Said you're thinking about it. Marcus nodded. She's right about the momentum, right about the need. But James, we're old men. We rode 9 hours to make a point. Can we actually build infrastructure? Can we create something sustainable? Ironside refilled both glasses, his hands shaking slightly. Age or emotion, or both. In Vietnam, we learned to adapt. Remember when command kept sending us into situations with inadequate support? We built our own networks. We created our own supply lines. We took care of our own because nobody else would. This is the same thing. Command the schools, the administrators, the systems, they're failing. So we build our own network. We create our own response mechanism. We take care of kids who need it because nobody else will. But we're not soldiers anymore. We're veterans with bad knees and worse hearts and bodies that barely work. Ironside smiled, the expression carrying decades of shared history. That's why we recruit the younger generation. Train them. Pass down what we know. You think I can ride 9 hours anymore without consequences? I'll be in pain for weeks. But I can teach a 40-year-old how to organize a ride. I can show a 30-year-old what it means to stand up. We're not building this alone, Marcus. We're building it with everyone who believes what we believe. Maya appeared in the garage doorway, still wearing Elena's jacket, her presence reminding Marcus that this wasn't just about veterans and brotherhood. This was about the next generation, about showing children that courage mattered, that standing up counted, that the bullies didn't always win if enough good people refused to walk away. Dad, she said quietly. Liam's mom called. She wants to talk to you, says it's important. Marcus took the phone, hearing Sarah Chen's voice tight with emotion. Mr. Rodriguez, Marcus, Liam wants to speak at your assembly. If you do another one, he wants to tell his story. He says other kids need to know it's okay to be scared and stand up anyway. The kid just had facial surgery. He should be resting, not... He says he can't rest, knowing there are other kids being told their courage was stupid. He says you showed him that standing up gets honored, and now he wants to honor other kids by showing them his face, his scars, his story. Marcus, I can't talk him out of it. And maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this is how he heals. Marcus closed his eyes, seeing Liam's bandaged face, feeling the weight of what the boy was offering. It would mean visibility, vulnerability, reliving trauma for public consumption. It would also mean transforming pain into purpose, courage into movement, personal suffering into collective healing. Tell him yes. Tell him we're building something national, and he's the heart of it. Tell him his story matters more than he knows. The 72 hours became a blur of coordination. Ironside worked Pittsburgh connections, Doc mobilized Baltimore networks, Ghost leveraged Cleveland relationships, Dex activated Philadelphia resources. Jennifer Okafor created legal structures, drafted nonprofit paperwork, established funding mechanisms. Maya became the youngest member of the coordinating team, her perspective ensuring they never forgot the primary audience children who needed to believe courage mattered. 3 weeks after the Springdale ride, they reconvened at a convention center in Philadelphia. Not 637 brothers this time, but representatives from 14 states, 47 chapters, spanning Vietnam to Iraq to civilians who'd never served but understood what the brotherhood represented. Media filled the back rows, cameras ready to document whatever came next. Marcus stood at the podium, feeling his age in ways that went beyond physical pain. This was responsibility on a scale he'd never imagined, legacy that would outlive him, commitment that couldn't be walked back once announced. Behind him sat Liam Chen, his face still showing bruises, but healing visibly, his presence testament to why they'd gathered. 3 weeks ago, Marcus began 637 brothers rode to a small Pennsylvania town because an 11-year-old boy showed more courage in 30 seconds than most adults show in a lifetime. We rode to honor that courage. We rode to demand accountability from systems that failed him. We rode because standing up still matters, especially when standing up costs something. Today we're announcing the formal establishment of the Brotherhood Stand-Up Initiative, a nationwide network designed to support children who protect others, to demand accountability from schools that fail those children, and to teach the next generation what real courage looks like. The room erupted in applause, but Marcus raised his hand for silence. This isn't about one ride. It's about creating infrastructure that ensures every Liam Chen in this country knows their courage gets honored, not punished. It's about building response mechanisms, so when a school protects a bully over a hero, hundreds of veterans show up to educate them on what real strength means. Jennifer Okafor stepped to the microphone, her professional demeanor carrying weight that Marcus's emotion couldn't provide. The initiative operates on 3 pillars. First, recognition. Children who demonstrate courage protecting others receive scholarships, mentorship, and public acknowledgement. Second, accountability. Schools that fail to protect those children face coordinated advocacy from veterans who understand moral authority. Third, education. We teach the communities that courage deserves celebration, that standing up matters, that bullies don't win when good people refuse to walk away. She clicked to a presentation slide showing statistics that made Marcus's chest ache. 1 in 5 children report being bullied. 70% of teachers witness bullying, but intervene less than 30% of the time. Schools with zero-tolerance policies often punish victims who fight back equally with aggressors. The message children receive is clear. Don't stand up, don't protect others, don't make waves. Stay safe, stay quiet, let someone else handle it. That ends now, Jennifer said. Today we're launching in 14 states with 47 chapters committed to response protocols. When a child like Liam gets broken for protecting someone, when a school protects the bully because his parents have money, we show up. Not for violence, for visibility, for education, for consequences that systems can't ignore. Liam Chen approached the microphone, his small frame dwarfed by the podium, his bandaged face visible on screens throughout the convention center. Marcus had to look away briefly, emotion threatening control. My name is Liam Chen. I'm 11 years old. 3 weeks ago, I got beaten up for protecting my friend Maya from bullies. They broke my nose and my face and gave me a concussion. It hurt a lot. It still hurts. But you know what hurt more? Thinking that standing up was stupid. Thinking that being brave just gets you destroyed and nobody cares. His voice cracked, but he continued, finding strength that transcended age. Then Mr. Rodriguez and 637 brothers showed up at my school. They told me my courage mattered. They gave me a scholarship. They made the bullies apologize. They showed me that standing up wasn't stupid. It was the most important thing I'd ever done. Liam paused, looking directly at the cameras broadcasting to national audiences. If you're a kid who got hurt protecting someone, if you're scared because you stood up and got punished for it, if you think being brave is stupid, it's not. It's the opposite of stupid. It's the most important thing you can be. And now there are thousands of people, veterans and dads and grandpas, who promise that your courage won't go unnoticed, that you're not alone, that standing up always matters. The convention center went silent except for the sound of grown men crying, warriors who'd faced enemy fire, finding themselves undone by a child's courage. Marcus watched brothers wipe eyes, watched tough guys who'd survived Vietnam and Iraq break down at the simple power of a 11-year-old refusing to let trauma define him. This was legacy. This was what Elena had meant about making his last ride count. Not dying dramatically in some final blaze of glory, but building something that would outlive him, that would protect children he'd never meet, that would carry forward the values his generation had learned in blood and tried to preserve through brotherhood. The weeks that followed demonstrated the power of mobilized purpose. The initiative's website received 40,000 visits in the first 72 hours. Parents nominated children for recognition. Kids who'd defended classmates from assault, who'd reported abuse despite social consequences, who'd chosen courage over comfort in countless small ways that deserved acknowledgement. 14 schools across 8 states received formal notification that the Brotherhood was monitoring their anti-bullying responses, creating accountability through visibility. 3 school boards revised policies under the pressure of veterans showing up at meetings asking pointed questions about why bullies received protection while heroes got punished. Marcus's garage became unofficial headquarters, his workbench transformed from motorcycle restoration to coordination center. Maps covered walls showing chapter locations, response protocols, pending cases of children who needed support. Maya worked beside him after school, her 12-year-old perspective ensuring they never lost sight of the primary audience. But success carried costs that compounded daily. Marcus's body, pushed beyond reasonable limits during the Springdale ride, began extracting payment. His hip pain escalated from manageable to debilitating. The stents in his heart struggled under stress. His doctor's warnings became ultimatums: slow down or face consequences that couldn't be survived. 6 weeks after the Springdale ride, Marcus collapsed in his garage at 2 a.m. while coordinating a response to a case in Oregon. Maya found him 20 minutes later, unconscious and barely breathing, his phone still gripped in hand, displaying messages about a 13-year-old girl who'd been suspended for defending a disabled classmate from assault. The hospital room carried the antiseptic smell of mortality. Monitors beeped reassurance that Marcus's heart still functioned, that the machines could keep him alive when his body wanted to quit. Ironside sat vigil in the chair beside the bed, his weathered face carrying the weight of watching another brother fall. "Doctor says you push too hard," Ironside said when Marcus finally opened his eyes. "Says your heart can't handle this level of stress. Says you need to step back from the initiative or you'll be dead inside 6 months." Marcus tried to speak, his throat raw from intubation. "The Oregon case is being handled. Dex flew out yesterday with a dozen brothers. The school board met last night and reversed the suspension. The girl's getting a scholarship. The bully's getting expelled. It's handled, Marcus. You built something that works without you being the center of it. But there are so many cases, so many kids who need you alive more than they need you working yourself to death. You think Liam wants to hear you died building this. You think Maya wants to lose another parent because you couldn't let someone else carry the weight." The truth of that settled into Marcus's chest like shrapnel, sharp and undeniable. He'd been operating under the assumption that his time was short anyway, that burning out while building something meaningful was preferable to dying slowly in a hospital bed. But he'd forgotten the lesson Vietnam had taught: you couldn't protect anyone if you destroyed yourself in the process. "How bad is it?" Marcus asked. "Doctor says you need surgery. Valve replacement, probably more stents. 3 months recovery, minimum. 6 months before you can ride again, and even then only short distances. You're done with 9-hour rides, Marcus. You're done pushing your body like it's still 22 years old." Marcus closed his eyes, processing the end of an era. No more long rides with the Brotherhood. No more showing up at schools with 600 brothers behind him. No more being the physical presence that intimidated systems into accountability. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that was the point. Build something sustainable, then step back and let it run without you. That was leadership, creating structures that outlived their founders, that evolved beyond single personalities into movements that carried forward through generations. "I'll do the surgery," Marcus said. "But Ironside, I need you to promise something. The initiative, don't let it become about me. Don't let media make this a hero story about one old vet. Make it about the kids. Make it about Liam and every child who shows courage. Make it about the Brotherhood spanning generations, not one man who happened to make the first call." "Already handled," Ironside said, smiling. "Jennifer's got media training scheduled for 20 brothers across 14 states. We're decentralizing leadership so no single person becomes the bottleneck. You built the foundation, Marcus. Now you get to watch it grow beyond you." The surgery happened 3 days later. Marcus went under anesthesia, wondering if he'd wake up if this was the end Elena had predicted, but not quite how she'd imagined. But he woke to find Maya sitting beside his bed, wearing Elena's jacket, her face showing relief and determination in equal measure. "Dad," she said quietly, "while you were in surgery, something happened. The initiative got its first success story. Remember Tyler, one of Brandon Marshall's friends who helped beat up Liam?" Marcus nodded memory, supplying the image of a frightened 14-year-old apologizing under the weight of 637 witnesses. "He called Jennifer yesterday, said he wants to volunteer with the initiative. Said watching Liam forgive him, watching you show up for someone you'd never met, it changed something in him. He wants to talk to other bullies, wants to tell them it's not too late to become different people. That's redemption." Marcus said, his voice rough from intubation, but carrying satisfaction. "That's the long game. Not just punishing bullies, but showing them there's another path. Showing them courage can be learned even after you've been a coward." Maya squeezed his hand. "Mom would be proud of you. Of this. Of everything you built. Your mom built half of it. All those years she spent teaching you to stand up, all those conversations about protecting people weaker than you. That's what made you the kind of kid who'd befriend Liam, who'd sit with him when he was alone. This whole thing started because you showed him kindness. Never forget that, Maya. Courage starts small. It starts with sitting beside someone who's isolated. Everything else builds from there." Recovery was brutal. 3 months of limited mobility, of watching the initiative expand through screens instead of participating directly. But the forced distance provided perspective Marcus hadn't possessed while drowning in coordination. He watched chapters organize independently, watched younger veterans step into leadership roles, watched the system he'd built prove it could function without his constant involvement. Tyler Marshall's redemption arc became a case study in the initiative's educational component. The 14-year-old who'd helped hospitalize Liam now spoke at schools about the moment 637 men showed him what real strength looked like, about learning that courage meant protecting instead of dominating, about discovering that change was possible even after causing harm. Brandon Marshall remained a harder case. His father withdrew him from Springdale Middle, enrolled him in private school, tried to bury the incident under new beginnings and expensive therapy. But the internet never forgot. The video of him apologizing to Liam, of 637 men standing witness to his cowardice, followed him like digital shrapnel. Whether that destroyed him or eventually redeemed him remained an open question. Liam Chen thrived. His face healed, leaving thin scars that would fade with time, his courage immortalized in footage that went viral beyond anyone's prediction. He spoke at initiative events, his quiet voice carrying weight that transcended age, his willingness to show scars teaching other children that surviving courage was its own form of strength. And Maya, 12 years old and already understanding more about moral courage than most adults learned in lifetimes, became the initiative's youngest advocate. She spoke about what it meant to watch her father nearly die building something that mattered, about learning that legacy wasn't about living forever, but about building things that outlasted you. 6 months after his surgery, Marcus attended his first initiative event since the hospital. Not as leader, not as coordinator, but as witness to what his single phone call had created. The Philadelphia Convention Center hosted 2,000 people, veterans, parents, teachers, students. Media gathered to celebrate the initiative's first-year impact. Jennifer Okafor presented statistics that made Marcus's chest ache with pride. 387 children recognized for courage protecting others. 142 schools revised anti-bullying policies under brotherhood advocacy. 53 chapters now operating in 28 states. 12 suicides prevented through intervention and support. $1 million raised in scholarships. But the number that mattered most, zero. 0 children punished for protecting others once the initiative became involved. 0 bullies receiving detention while their victims got suspended. 0 school boards choosing privilege over principle when 600 brothers showed up demanding accountability. Liam Chen spoke again, now 12 years old, and fully healed, his scars visible, but no longer defining. "A year ago, I got beaten up for protecting my friend. I thought that meant standing up was stupid. Then Mr. Rodriguez showed me it wasn't. He showed me courage gets honored if enough good people refuse to accept injustice. Now I want to show you something." Liam gestured to the screen behind him, where dozens of faces appeared, children from across the country, each one displaying scars or bruises or bandages, each one holding signs reading, "I stood up and my courage mattered." These are kids who protected others this year, who got hurt standing up, who wondered if being brave was stupid. The initiative found them, supported them, honored them, showed them they weren't alone. Because of Mr. Rodriguez and 637 brothers who rode to show me my courage mattered, these kids know their courage matters too. The crowd rose in standing ovation, and Marcus found himself crying not from sadness, but from the overwhelming reality that one decision, one phone call, one ride had multiplied into national movement that would outlive everyone in the room. Ironside found him after the ceremony, both men moving slower than they had a year ago, both carrying injuries that time wouldn't heal. "We did it, brother. Built something that lasts." Elena would say, "We just showed up," Marcus replied. "That all it takes is refusing to walk away when someone needs you." Hawk would say, "We died with our boots on. Made our last ride count." They stood in silence, two old warriors watching the next generation take ownership of values learned in blood, passed through brotherhood, preserved through the simple act of showing up. When showing up mattered most. Maya approached with Liam, the two children who'd catalyzed everything through simple acts of friendship and courage. They'd grown in the past year, Maya taller, Liam more confident, both carrying awareness that their choices had rippled far beyond initial intention. "Dad," Maya said, "Liam and I want to start a youth chapter. Kids teaching other kids about courage. Is that okay?" Marcus looked at Ironside, both men recognizing the moment for what it was. Legacy transferring to the next generation, responsibility passing to hands strong enough to carry it forward. "More than okay," Marcus said. "It's perfect." This was never about old men on motorcycles. It was about teaching everyone, young, old, veteran, civilian, that courage matters. That standing up counts. That protecting others is worth whatever it costs. He knelt carefully, his replaced valve and healing body protesting, but cooperating until he was eye level with both children. "You two started this. You, Maya, by befriending someone who was isolated. You, Liam, by protecting someone who needed protection. Everything else, the ride, the initiative, the national movement, that all grew from your courage. Never forget that. Never forget that changing the world starts with small acts of kindness and courage that ripple outward in ways you can't predict." The evening ended with ritual, borrowed from military tradition, brothers standing in formation, hands over hearts, honoring children who'd shown courage, acknowledging parents who'd supported them, committing to another year of showing up when systems failed, of demanding accountability, when institutions chose comfort over principle. Marcus rode home slowly, his bike purring beneath him, Philadelphia lights fading into Pennsylvania darkness. His body ached, his heart struggled, his future measured in years rather than decades. But Elena's journal lay in his saddlebag, her final entry about making his last ride count, fulfilled beyond anything she could have imagined. This hadn't been his last ride after all. It had been his first ride into legacy, into building something that would carry forward long after his heart finally gave out or his cancer returned, or age claimed what war and time had been slowly taking. The brotherhood would continue. The initiative would grow. Children would keep showing courage, and veterans would keep showing up to honor it. Bullies would keep emerging, and hundreds of brothers would keep riding to show them that cowardice had consequences, that privilege didn't buy immunity, that systems could be changed when enough good people refused to accept injustice. And somewhere tonight, a child was being beaten for protecting someone weaker. Somewhere a school was choosing money over morality. Somewhere a parent was learning their child's courage would be punished instead of honored. But now, unlike a year ago, there was response infrastructure. There were veterans ready to ride. There were chapters prepared to show up. There was a brotherhood spanning generations, united by the belief that courage mattered, that standing up counted, that protecting others was worth whatever it cost. Marcus pulled into his garage, the familiar smell of motor oil and history welcoming him home. Hawk's panhead sat completed, now restored to glory, ready for its next ride. Elena's journal lay open on the workbench, her handwriting steady and certain. Die with your boots on. Make your last ride count. He'd done both, and the ride wasn't over yet. It was just beginning.